Hello, welcome to the Stepping In podcast. I'm your host, Adam Klein. In this episode, I'm joined by Lizzie Azzolino, one of our graduates from a few years ago. And in this conversation, we really step into what does it mean to continue to change and learn and really be in our transformational journey in an ongoing way, not just in one moment in our life. I was really enlivened by this conversation. I hope you are too. We look forward to hearing from you. Stepping in at newventureswest.com. Enjoy the episode. Well, it's really good to see you, Lizzie. I'm so glad you said yes, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Good excuse to catch up.
So, as a starting place, where do we find you? Where are you these days?
I'm in Santa Monica. I just moved here after a seriously dark night of the soul in New York in the dark of winter. And before that, you and I met in San Francisco. I was there for 10 years.
Right.
So Santa Monica is like the light at the end of the tunnel in all of the ways. And behind me is a painting I bought in San Francisco years ago. And I remember seeing it and just feeling so magnetized by it. And only as I'm here am I coming to realize I think this painting is just me. It's like the experience of my life represented in a painting. So in San Francisco, in front of a painting of me, that's where you find me.
Beautiful. Okay, now you said this really powerful phrase, dark night of the soul, which um, it's so interesting. I want to dive into that. And I think maybe where to go with is more as you find yourself on this side of it, or maybe still emerging, what are you carrying with you, or what are you learning from where you've been?
I am an expert grasper onto what I know, onto anything that gives me an illusion of control. And my move to New York, which was short lived, it was 6 months, was my last attempt to like grasp on to any sense of my old self. And instead, what I did was actually unravel and unearth like all the things that I decided to keep buried that I would look at some point in my life when I was ready. And they just all came to a head in New York. And there have been moments in my life where I felt like this was a new chapter, like I'm a new person. That's probably happened 3 times up until this point. This was unlike anything that I've ever experienced. And I feel like I had to just completely break open in order to be reborn as a different version of myself, in an entirely new way. And so, what I'm bringing with me is a commitment to allow myself to do things differently than the past, which has been hard and uncomfortable. And I know so clearly who I'm here to be and why I'm here and what my journey in this life, what my soul so wants my journey in this life to be. And now my work is to do it. To like put one foot in front of the other, to be in my body, to be embodied, and to do that uncomfortable work. So the easy work for me has always been to intuitively know who I am and what needs to happen and where I'm headed. But it is the actual act of doing it physically that is my work. So there was a coming. So I sold everything in New York during this dark night of the soul moment. And with 2 suitcases
Yeah.
and no idea where I was actually going to call home, on a plane from New York to Los Angeles to stay with a friend for a little
Wow.
bit of time, I had never felt more at home because it was like I cleared all of these material senses of control and security. And I was just starting over. And I was like, I have all I need. So landing in LA has felt
Mm.
like I'm finally home, like I finally belong in a different kind of way.
Well, that's so beautiful. And I hear you on this. Like the energy that's required and the commitment to bring something from the ethereal world or what our soul is saying and then have it become tangible, manifested on earth. And it's one of the things I love about our work is it lives at that intersection
Hmm.
of in the one version of philosophy, like where heaven and earth meet.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious,
Yeah.
I'm so curious, can you say a little bit more about what's wanting to come through?
Hmm. One of, I would say, a really significant shift for me in every chapter of my life has been learning to trust what I know is real
Mm,
and express that and manifest
yeah.
that. And in early childhood and then in early adulthood, most likely leading up to the point that I met you during at New Ventures West training, I knew the truth, but I shared it out of fear
Uh,
and out of a need to control, out of a need to protect myself, from more of a place of lack. And now I have come into this gift of seeing the truth in people and in systems and in our world and sharing it when the time is right,
mhm,
when the invitation is there, and from my heart entirely. So, from a place of wholeness. And so much of what I know about myself is I'm here to be a storyteller
mm,
and to help us all through this collective transition to really know and be ourselves individually and collectively in a new way. And I do that through stories, and I do that through personal stories, and I do that through helping people and groups change how they've seen their past, how they see their future, and then what's actually available in the present moment. And so I'm constantly finding new ways to bring that to life. And then in an interconnected world, I'm doing the same in my
right,
life.
right. Yeah, I mean that's profound. I remember learning, I can't remember who I learned it from many years ago, and there's different versions of it, but how we live into the stories we tell ourselves.
Yes.
So the story we have becomes something that we actually start living into. So if we start to learn what's a better story to tell, and how might that include more of me, more of what I feel like is essential for me to bring to the world, and it can actually happen.
Yes.
But it's a big undertaking and not just a theoretical exercise, because then it calls on us to
No.
start shifting our sense of
Yeah.
ourself, other people, how we behave, what we take up, what we let go of.
It's real work to decide that to ask. I would like to know my blind spots.
Right,
I would like for them to be revealed to me. And I want to work through those and I want to grow through those. And to actually have those illuminated is like it's profound work. And what I know is what I've personally experienced, what I'm seeing people individually experience, and then what we're collectively experiencing is so much of that is just coming up right now. And like we're being asked to meet it differently and not to try to contort it, but to actually transform it and change it, and to really confront with a lot of compassion the beliefs that we've held for so long.
Now, another way I want to enter into this, and we were talking about it a little bit before we officially got started here, which is around coaching. So the question I had in mind was, why coaching all those years ago? What had you move into that? But now also this other question you're in is it really coaching, or what is this really that I'm up to? So maybe just as context, the first part, like why coaching in the first place, and now where you find yourself in this conversation of, does the story need a little bit of adjusting?
Yes. Yeah. So why coaching in the first place? I don't know. Was this 8 years ago? 8 years
Yeah, it was
ago?
about 8 years ago.
9 years
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah. Actually,
Eight.
I wanted to see. I'm like, I'm gonna look this up. So yeah, it was 2017,
Tell me.
2018.
Okay, 2017, 2018. It feels like it was 80 years ago. So New Ventures West was my first
Yeah.
experience with coaching, and I decided to become a coach in the process, right? I was coming from a very type A strategy career where, as I already shared with you, it was like I always knew the
Yeah.
answer. I knew the right thing. And so I always thought, oh, coaching. Well, I always know the answer. So like I could be a coach. But deep down, I know my soul wanted me to join that class so I could actually learn about myself, really. And I remember the first, so there was something about New Ventures West. I explored a lot of programs. New Ventures West, amazing reputation. And everything you all do is rooted in narratives. I went to school for journalism. Stories, the through thread of my career, always has been. And so I was very drawn to the approach. And I remember the first day, my last name's Azzolino. I think we sat in alphabetical order, potentially,
That
if
sounds
I'm
right. Yeah,
remembering
that
this
sounds
right.
right.
And so I was the first person to have to share. It was like something incredibly vulnerable. And I remember like putting away my notepad, getting out the Kleenex, and actually beginning to feel my heart in a really powerful way. So why coaching initially? Because I thought I had all the answers.
Oh, yeah.
And at the time, right? And then upon graduation a year later, I thought, oh, not coaching. I just know who I am a little bit more now. I'm going to see how this unfolds. I ended up leaving my strategy career eventually, and only later did I even add coach as a title, when it became a part of what I wanted to offer to the world. But it was like immediately I started to view myself and view the world as a coach, as a part of New Ventures West.
Yeah, and today you're questioning this name of coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything that I create and do and bring and believe in my work is the collective expression of all of my work and life experience and now past lives as I've connected to them. And the modalities and what I bring in to work with people, it's coach doesn't really encapsulate it anymore. And so I'm such a believer that words create our reality, stories create our reality. And so I've very much been in the process of creating a new reality and shaping my story and still working to find the language for it.
So one of the things I'm wondering about now is we've been talking because you've been so really open about your process and the different points, and also bringing clarity about, well, there's a through line of narrative and storytelling. Who knows what
Yep.
um, the current story is? 'Cause it sounds like you're still shaping that. But what I'm wondering about for people who are listening and they're navigating like unknown territory of, what do I want? What do I
Mm-hmm.
do?
Mm-hmm.
That space of questioning, but also, do I really want to answer this question of what I want because
Mm-hmm.
of what it might reveal? So I'm curious, based on
Mm-hmm.
your way through this so far, what would you relate to those folks listening?
Hmm. There's what do you want is maybe even a harder question to answer than who are you?
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't start at what do I really want?
Mm,
Because when you start there, it's not coming from who you really are.
mm,
So, as far as I'm concerned, there is a sequence and then there's not, because everything's interconnected. But one of the things that I always do in these crossroads moments where I know I'm changing, this isn't me anymore, but what is? What's next? Is I make a list of who I was, what I believed, all of the things that created the story of the chapter that I want to close.
mm,
And I reflect on what are the lessons
mm,
here? And then in that process, I naturally begin to craft. So, what are the seeds or the breadcrumbs of the chapter that I'm stepping into and that I'm opening? Like, who am I now?
mm-hmm.
Who do I want to be now?
Right.
Like, how do I want to feel now? And one of the incredibly overlooked parts of real change is actually healing, understanding, and integrating the past. Because if we don't, or when we do, if we don't, we end up back in a similar place.
Yeah, because it's not really past. We use this word like it was like it's
Yeah.
left somewhere.
Yes.
No,
It's
it's
all
like,
here, past, present,
yeah,
future.
right. I know.
Everything's here right now. And so it is only when we really look at and understand our past and our present that we can get really clear on our desired future. And our desired future is actually far closer to us than we realize. So, really looking back and looking at yourself is an important part of figuring out what's
Hmm.
next.
I'm appreciating that, the especially the like pragmatic part of writing those things down,
Yeah.
which I think can
Yes.
often go overlooked because we can mentally rehearse these things, but there is a powerful moment when we put either thumbs to tapping it out or fingers on a keyboard or picking up these things called pens and writing on paper in that
I
translation
always
moment.
encourage,
Yeah, writing. Yeah.
yeah, actual writing because computers can be very programmed. Like it's always writing, and something that I do often is I do this with people I work with too, is write a letter from your highest self to the version of you that you are saying goodbye to.
Mm,
What you learned from this person, what you appreciate,
mm,
and then what you really want now. It's really powerful to actually connect with these versions of ourselves.
mm. Can you share a little bit more about like some things that have happened for you in writing these letters?
Hmm. Well, I feel like everything I've learned through these letters. Let me think of something recently. So, yeah, actually, A letter that I wrote to myself in Brooklyn that really changed everything was after coming into the realization that I had this unconscious belief that my life was supposed to be hard,
Ah.
that I was the person that my value was because I could experience these miraculous
Mm.
things through the hardest
Mm.
moments. Being diagnosed with an incurable cancer, like the countless things where I've overcome through really hard things, real transformation. And this was something that was programmed in my early childhood. Um, and so my move to New York made a ton of sense because it's a really hard city to live in. And everyone who I met there reinforced how hard it was.
Mm.
They're like, yeah, it's hard.
Mm.
And I started to realize everyone that was there, it was like they loved it because it was hard.
Mm.
And that's like a part of the
Yeah.
culture. And I was like, wait. And I'm saying, and I'm laughing because everything is like laughter, but it was incredibly painful to realize that, oh, that was like my safe zone, is things being really hard. And so I ended up writing a letter to myself that I am now trusting that the things that are truly meant for me will happen with ease.
Mm.
And which doesn't mean it's not hard work, because it's a different kind of hard, but it's a trusting in the process and like meeting life in each moment, and just a completely different embodied experience.
Yeah, I can feel what you're talking about. What I'm hearing you say, at least, is that in the previous way about it was like hard was something that needed to be there because it was like a way that you could, it was familiar and it was like
Yeah.
ground you could stand on. Oh, I know how to work with things that are hard. So everything needs to be hard. And if it's hard, then I'm familiar with that. I know what to do. I know how to behave in that situation. And what I hear
Yep.
you saying now is it's not that things can't be difficult, and that might be what's required is to move through something difficult that or is hard, but not that that has to. It's not a precondition for life, and life can
Yeah.
show up with ease, and maybe it could be easeful for a long, long time before something hard comes back. Is that what you're
Yes,
kind of what you're pointing
and
to?
yes, and since I've moved here, which happened with, it was not easy
Right.
to decide to sell everything in New York, to pay a fortune to break my
Mm.
lease, to remember that 6 months before that, I sold my car in San Francisco. I mean, just like the money,
Right.
right? Like all of these things, but knowing that, feeling lifted and supported by a different frequency that was like, no, like let go
Yeah.
and move this way, and just allowing things to happen without trying to make them happen, without needing to have the
Yeah.
plan. And since I've moved here, some of the things have come up in my family, in my life, that in the past would have completely devastated me.
Mm.
And now I'm just seeing them in a different
Mm.
way. So yes, hard things will continue to happen, but I don't need to meet them with hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a subtle distinction. It's a subtle thing you're pointing to. That's what I'm trying to um, like spend some time lingering here to try to draw out this nuance
Yeah.
of saying I'm not going to operate with the story that life has to be hard doesn't simultaneously mean saying I can't be in hard things.
That's right. Yes. There's I've been studying Kabbalah a lot
Uh-huh.
recently, Jewish
Mm-hmm.
mysticism. And the reason that I've been just loving it so much is because I feel like it encapsulates so much of what I've come to learn from disparate places in one philosophy. And so much of it is rooted in this belief in certainty,
Mm.
which is everything and everyone that comes into our path is here to help us transform. And so to meet it with, they have a phrase, you pause, and then you say, what a pleasure, not actually out loud, but
Mm.
inside, because you know this is here to help you grow. And so rather than meet it with resistance, it's like welcoming it in and then really being choiceful about how to show up.
Mm.
And that feels far more easeful than trying to figure it out from a place of wanting to control or manipulate or over architect.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even try to suck too much learning out of something. Like maybe it's just this
Right.
much instead of this much.
Yeah. Maybe this thing that everyone says is so big when these things happen, maybe it doesn't have to feel that
Yeah.
way. Yeah, so it is. It's a nuance. It's like allow yourself to feel the feelings. Like don't dismiss the feelings and don't it's we have to work through the feelings or they'll just come back. But it's allowing them to move through us in a different
Mm.
way. Yeah.
So something I'm curious about, because you're talking a lot about, from what I'm hearing, like staying in this process of learning, staying open to who am I
Yeah.
now, what's important to me now, like really these evolving questions rather than like you've been talking about living with certainty.
Hmm.
And that to me isn't a place that people often live, in this openness of wanting things to continue to move and flow and change. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what have you found supports you in staying open in this kind of way where like things can continue to flow, your understanding of yourself can continue to flow? What allows that for
Yeah.
you?
Not just a mental, but like a deeply embodied knowing that I'm here to grow and evolve
Hmm.
always. And that growth and evolution means constantly expanding what I believe.
Has that been a pretty consistent thing you've been in contact with as far as you can remember? No.
No.
Okay. All right.
The total
Yeah, so where did
opposite.
that come from?
No. Oh, it's been a slowly unfolding process. And then recently it's gotten like quite
Yeah.
rapid, like the pace. I'm sure, like everyone else, this moment feels different. It's because it is. There's like an energy that is
Yeah.
propelling us to change right now. Um, no, new ventures, well, there are a number of moments that I think really catalyzed this for me, and they're all long stories. And so I'm going to give the short version of them. I'm happy to go into more
Sure, sure,
detail.
yeah.
One was I was working in my strategy career soon before I came to New Ventures West. Coaching was not on my radar at the time. And I an important thing to know about me is I had lived so much of my life up until that point dedicated to being independent, making money, having status, accomplishing things, all born from a belief at the time that that's what I needed to be
Mm.
safe and to fit
Yeah.
in. And I received a call from a doctor in a hospital in Atlanta. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and he explained to me that my mom was in the ICU with complications from a long time struggle with alcohol. And it was like my greatest fear was being
Mm.
realized. And time stood still. And of course, I started to blame myself for all kinds of reasons. And I don't remember the plane ride I took across the country, but what I do remember is opening the door to my mom's hospital room, was so terrified at what might happen. And I walked to her bed, and she was heavily medicated. And she looked at me. She opened her eyes, and I feel like she looked into my soul. And she said, "Who are you?"
Mm.
And the question was so real to her, and it was real to
Yeah.
me because I realized I didn't actually know that
Yeah.
answer. And so much of who I thought I was and what I thought I was working toward, it just started to unravel from that point on.
Mm.
And there's a lot that happened. I enrolled in New Ventures West for like all kinds of reasons. And New Ventures West opened my worldview in a big way. And leaving my full-time job, choosing to follow my intuition, to leave my full-time career without really knowing what was next, but knowing I needed to figure that out was a big move. And I, about 4 years into that, I got extremely sick and spent a lot of time searching for what was wrong with me.
Mm.
Like so much
Yeah.
time searching. And at one point was diagnosed with an incurable cancer. And this was in my early-ish 30s. And that experience changed me in a really big way. Because it was, looking back now, it was a gift on my path to allow me to start to pay attention to my body and to start to experience who I was in a different way. And that opened up a lot for me. And there's a long version of this story, but I no longer have cancer. And I really healed a lot from that experience. There are a number of these things that it's like these moments in life meet me, and I actually do take them as openings, which is at the time what New Ventures West called them.
Yeah.
I really do see them as openings
Yeah.
to say, what am I not seeing?
Yeah.
Like, what world exists outside of this one that I've been living in? So there have been a number of moments where I feel like my world just keeps expanding. And it's like, years ago, I thought, I'm living in a house, it has 2 bedrooms, and I can move around the furniture and it might feel a little bit different. And then a year goes on and it's like, I find a hidden room. I'm like, oh, my house feels bigger. Who knew? And I'm going to get adjusted to this. And that process has continued until about a year and a half ago, I started to realize I'm not in a house. Like, there is no house. This is an entire You're like, whoo, the world is massive. So it's just this
Uh,
constant, I think just over time, I've actually gotten nervous and excited about like all of these new versions of a house not house that are out there, and that just continues to happen. And I've gotten far more comfortable, although it's not comfortable, with the process of relearning
yeah.
how to be myself and how to show up and how to relate to others and how to do this life thing. So I feel like I'm basically an infant all the
Yeah.
time.
So powerful. And you are underscoring this capacity I feel like we have as human beings to be aware of these openings or be impacted by these openings that are really abundant in our life. We just move by them so quickly. But when they occur, if we, for whatever reason in that moment, are able to do it, and so there's a lot of mystery there going on for me at least, that they can build on one another, and we become more used to, oh, I can hang out in this opening even though it feels destabilizing, or I have to unlearn things. But there's something that occurs in that moment that if we allow it to imprint, that we can find our way back to it more often. And it kind
Yes.
of builds, and it's not like you said, it's not that necessarily gets easier. It's, I don't know what I would maybe say,
No.
we just become more capable, or we have more capacity, or we feel more held by life, that whatever it is, we can stay there and we're going to not be obliterated, that something lasting is actually going to turn up even more profoundly, that we can stay anchored in.
In every single day, I find that there's more support than I thought there was the day before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, Adam, the way that you said that has me want to rephrase how I said what I said, which is the biggest shift that I decided to make in the move from New York to
Mm,
here is, rather than be met with an opening that is so big that it is impossible not to take it,
yeah.
I am now actually seeing every single moment as an opening.
Right. Right.
And I'm not choosing to take all of them because that would be incredibly destabilizing. I imagine a future where that will
Mm,
change. Um, but I'm just seeing that we really are unlimited
mm,
in our capacity, and that we we limit ourselves, I think, for good reason.
mm,
Um, but there's just, I think one of the things that I've learned from so many of my teachers and friends recently is, um, if we truly dream something and we are dedicated to it, it can
mm.
happen. It just takes a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It can happen is different than, and it's going to happen in a day or a week, or there's a lot that you're pointing to.
And it can happen
Yeah.
in a day. One of my teachers recently challenged us that, like, anything that you really care about, you can make it happen in a day.
Mm,
And I could get into details around that, but there's a lot, time, my whole construct of time is changing.
yes. Yeah, that's one of the
Yeah.
elements I think it's been an undercurrent in our conversation that I was wondering about asking about. I'm like, maybe we should start talking about time. And I was like, well, that could get a little abstract and who knows where it's going to go. But yes, that's a current in our conversation, is what is time? And we were talking earlier about, it's definitely not this linear thing like we like to think
No.
that it is.
No. I'm I don't have a definition for time.
Yeah.
And my experience of time and everything it's all here. You know, every thought, word, action, intention, past, present, future is here. Yeah. And that experience, I do believe, and there are people who know more about this than I do, but I do believe that it is a more common knowing of people in this particular moment that we are all in right now. Right. It feels like a very big inflection point for us all collectively.
Yeah. So I'm curious, we've been talking for a while now, if there's anything in particular that we haven't covered that you wanted to dive into, questions you wanted to center in the conversation, or anything else you want to say?
This is a message I'm saying to myself, and so I'll also say it to everyone else, that I really do believe we're all here. Time has been a theme in this conversation. Maybe I should write about time more. We are all here right now in this moment for a reason. And the energy of this moment is actually supporting us to decide what we want that reason to be and to do it. There's so many of the people I work with, and I've told myself this story so many times until I didn't, is like, it's too late. Or like, now is not the right time. Or, you know, I've stolen a phrase that I heard from I want to say it's Cynthia from New Ventures West, where there's no island in the sun where it's like it all works out and that's the right time to do it. No. It is, now is the time to do it. The best way to start is to start. And like the only way to do it is to just decide to do it. So I feel like right now is a really powerful time for people to connect deep down to what it is they really want in this life, like from a heart place. And to find ways to put that into action now.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like one of the gifts of this conversation that you've brought is the energy of creation. Yes. And that it's here and that we can collaborate with it. And there is something to saying yes to the moment. And yes. One of the beautiful things I think that we've touched on in an ongoing way, which I think you've really shared with us how it's been for you in an ongoing way, saying yes. And the creation doesn't have to stop. It can keep going.
Yes. And you don't always have to believe the yes. Yeah. That's another thing. Sometimes you can just say the yes and just do it. And then all of a sudden you realize it's happened. Right. or you start to catch up to the yes. So one of the things that I always do when something becomes very important to me is I share it with as many people as possible.
Beautiful.
And like words create momentum. Words are energy. It's like the act of sharing is creation. And so sharing what it is you're up to, a dream you have, it really does create a lot of momentum. And then people love to support you with dreams.
Right. It's true. I believe that's true.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a real pleasure, Lizzie. And like I said, many gifts, but this one in particular that's at the tail end of our conversation here about the creative energy and the possibility of saying yes to openings feels particularly potent. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam. So good to spend time together. I have so many questions for you.
Part 2.
Part 2. I know. If you want me to interview you, I will. We have all the time in the world.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right,
All
Lizzie, well,
right.
take care.
Good to see you.